Welcome to the Perspective Podcast, where we embrace open dialogue from different perspectives about entrepreneurship, relationships, and education.
And this open dialogue is needed, especially today, as we live in a Twitter finger society where everyone seems to care more about getting their point across than they are about hearing the other person's perspective.
If you're ready to grow your business, your relationships, and your personal development, stick with us here at the Perspective Podcast, because sometimes in life, to get to the next level, you just need a different perspective.
If I look like what I've been through, I'd be roadkill. Tell me off of the pavement, I'm reeking from the...
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Perspective Podcast. I'm C. Mouzon, got T here with me. Say what's up, T.
Bang! What's going on, family?
just waiting on your bang bang every week now, brother. Waiting on your bang bang every week. But excited, guys. Hey, we promised you round two. So we're back for round two, guys. We had an amazing conversation with these lovely ladies and gentlemen last week on the episode. You guys got a chance to hear. We had that polarizing conversation about the gentleman Kevin Samuels and some of the things and topics and how we're perceiving them and if they are something that is positive or negative for our society. We got into a really great conversation. Thank you for everybody that commented and listened to it. Again, we wanted to come give you guys round two and finish up or just continue to elaborate on the conversation, but take a different twist as we always do here on the Perspective Podcast, where we give you a little bit more than just the average and ordinary. So T, what were your thoughts? I'm gonna let you lead it in today on what we're talking about.
Yeah, no worries. Last week, like you said, Chris, I mean, that's a perfect setup. Like, we talked about a lot of the problems, right? As far as how things are said and the problems that we were actually talking about based on what was said from Kevin Samuels. And like he always says, hey, I'm just trying to get more Black people married. I'm just trying to build the family, which then builds on financial futures, et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes we can get lost in the sauce and how that comes across, right? But one of the things that we did talk about last week was being solution oriented, right? And we all kind of agreed between, I think it was like a 7.5 from LD to 8, all the way up to a 10, right? That it was a problem, right? Like, we do have some problems when it comes down to family connection, building that family within the Black community. And we all thought that was something that was important and actually did need to be addressed. Now, how we addressed it was one thing, but obviously it still needed to be addressed. So with that being said, because this is a Perspective Podcast, and as our listeners, you guys know, we don't just end with talking about problems. We're solution-oriented guys. And so we brought the group back, not to talk so much about the problem, but really to talk about the problem in the framework of what are some solutions and some different perspectives on those type of solutions. So there's a couple questions that, I want to ask the group, and we'll kind of get through it and piggyback and talk about it and probably have a little debate or have some conversations around some of those solutions. Ultimately, this is designed to get the thoughts out there, get the perspectives out there on how we can move our community forward when it comes down to family, building relationships, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to kick it off. I'm going to throw the first question or the question out to Jessica, and then everybody will have an opportunity to kind of go through it. But
by the way, welcome back. Welcome back, guys. Welcome back.
Of course, right? Welcome back. We didn't welcome over first.
Yeah,
I was just listening to you. I didn't even hear you say it.
I know, we're just in our own.
So disrespectful.
Right? We're super disrespectful when we have guests. We're not used to this having guest thing. So welcome back, guys. We appreciate you taking the time to even jump back on and join us for the conversation. So now
we'll go to it. And we're not editing that either, because that's just the type of way this podcast works. I don't think we ever hardly edit anything, do we?
I don't think we've edited ever.
That's just terrible. We just hit record and put it out. I don't know if that's good or not, but it doesn't matter to us.
Authenticity is everything.
Right, for sure. All right, now going to Jessica with one of these questions, or the question, right, to start us off. I kind of have it here. So we talk about the problem. We want to talk about some solutions. So Jessica, what's the number one, in your opinion, solution that you would bring to the table to kind of build the Black family today?
Okay. First, thank you for bringing me back. I'm excited to be back with everybody here today. In regards to what I bring, but what I suggest, I would say more of a suggestion.
Okay.
So I think that therapy is really, really important, because I feel like a lot of people have been through hurt and scars from their childhood. It's impacting them today as adults. So I feel like to get the Black family back together, we should work on ourselves, our fears, things that have hurt us in the past, so that we don't take that baggage into other people. And I see, like, on social media, like, a lot of people generalize people, and it's based on their own personal experience. And I feel like once you start healing from that pain and that hurt, you can start to judge people on a person by person basis, but not based on, what you've been through and putting that on them. That may not be their problem, maybe your problem. So just recognizing, hey, I have things I need to work on within myself, actively working on it, actively wanting to be better. And I feel like you can learn yourself more. And then with learning yourself more, you can attract and find a person who matches what it is you want out of life. And I feel like that's there's many things, but that's my number one. I feel like working on the past trauma and actively seeking therapy, or help to get past it, so they can find that meaningful relationship that they seek.
Let me ask you a question really quick with therapy, right? Because I've been like therapy averse for many years, right? Now I've always thought about therapy from a perspective of someone I can go and trust and communicate with, et cetera, not necessarily like a licensed individual who's a therapist, but someone I can go to, trust, that can kind of mentor and coach. Like, when you talk about therapy, like, specifically, what are you talking about in regards to therapy?
Well, it depends on the severity of the situation. There's some people who can do a regular person who's a coach, but they don't necessarily have the skills to teach you how to better yourself. Some people's situations, the trauma they've been through is way higher. And most people that aren't 100% with people they know. Like with the stranger, they feel like, oh, I'm not going to see them again, or they just know me because I'm here. They don't know where I work. They don't know any of this stuff about me. I can be more vulnerable. I can really, talk about my pain, my embarrassments more, and they can help me through it. Whereas someone, people fear judgment, how do they feel about me? And when you care about how people feel, you hide certain things about yourself as self-preservation, so you don't have to experience hurt. So I do believe that therapy, though, I feel like it should be more readily accessible to people of color and Black people. I feel like it should be more affordable for people of color and Black people. I feel like it should be in schools for the kids growing up. There's a lot of things that I feel like therapy needs to be, and not necessarily the stigma of you're crazy because you're in therapy. Well, maybe you might be a little bit crazy. But, PTSD, you have PTSD from more than just going to war. People lifestyles their childhood was a war zone, So they have that trauma of seeing such negativity. And I feel like the only way to get out of it is to really work through it, do the work, as Iyanla Vanzant would say, work on bettering yourself, accepting responsibility for yourself and bettering yourself. And I feel like the more healthy minded people we have, the more people will fear relationships less, because they won't be basing it on their childhood or what they've seen growing up.
Jess,
I like that. Okay.
I'm so glad you started here, Jess, because I'm a huge advocate for therapy. Huge advocate. I've been through therapy a few times myself, couples count, like marriage counseling, right? Like the whole nine. And I really believe like that is one of the keys that we all need. My thing is always thinking like, how do we erase the stigma, right? How do we actually get it in? Because some people don't even understand, like when you say PTSD and like we throw that term out there, some people don't even understand like how trauma actually affects our mind and like what actually we've been through that would classify as trauma. Some people think things are normal. It's just like, that's just kind of how it goes and how it is. And it's like, no, like that is trauma, right? Like that's not normal. And that you have to go see, because what happens is it's PTSD stacked on PTSD stacked on PTSD for 30 years of your life. And then you don't really understand why you're unraveling and why you can't figure things out and why the world is so, right? Like that's really what happens. And,
exactly. And I feel like even with people getting married and stuff, my own personal belief, I really feel like this is just my personal belief. I don't feel like people should get married without going to marriage counseling.
I second that.
Because I feel like everyone isn't getting married for the right reasons. Everyone is not marrying people because they see this as a partner that they can build a life with, and some people are just getting married because it's trendy, or they've been with someone, they've been in that long-term 10-year relationship, with no engagement, and they feel like it's time to put, the pedal to the metal. You need to marry me or I'm leaving. But if you'll notice, a lot of people don't want to go to premarital counseling because, that's when things start to unravel about the other person. You really need to see the ugly of the person to see, can you deal with that ugly? I really feel like, can you deal with this ugly? Is this person willing to evolve their ugly, or do they want to stay in that point? And does that match with where you're trying to go, how you're trying to raise children, which I feel like is very important. But couples need to be aligned on how they want to even raise kids, because that can cause lots of problems and stuff like that. So I just feel like counseling, therapy, healthy minded people, I feel like it's a necessity.
I like that. Adrissa, what you got? What's a solution that you see out there?
Like Jessica, therapy, I'm a big advocate for it as well. But I think before we even get there, we need to change the way. We need to change the way of thinking, right? So as a future, the goal is to be a licensed therapist, to have my own private practice. That is what I'm working on towards, right now. And I actually have a conversation with a male coworker this morning because he's on his second child. And I was like, oh, are you going to marry her? And he's like, no. Like, whoa. And I'm just like, so we could commit forever bonding with a baby, but we can't commit to marriage. And I see that as being a pattern. So I'm like, have you ever been to therapy? And he's just like, nah, no, that's not. So I think the first thing is just having the conversation, right? And that's my top priority right now, is asking the question about therapy, because people not really open to the idea. So we can't put the idea.
Just how come? Like, this is a big issue for me. Like, how come we're not open to the idea?
Two things. We think that they going to therapy is somebody telling you, giving you advice. That's what every man has ever said that I've had the conversation with, from my internships to adult conversations. Now, I don't need nobody telling me, what I'm saying, what to do or whatever. And it's like, so my goal is to change your way of thinking. Like, well, okay, so now I'm asking you 20 questions. And they're like, yo, he came, and I'm not, trying to boast or brag or anything. He came back in an hour later and was like, yo, that conversation really just, took me different. I was like, that's what therapy is. All we're doing is asking questions, having conversation, trying to, get you to self-reflect. That's all it is. Nobody's doing hocus pocus. Nobody's trying to get you, to do anything, out of the ordinary. So I think it's just changing the narrative, having the conversation. I think that's first.
I follow you 1,000%. And again, being an advocate for this space, and understanding that, like, this will really help people.
Yes.
It's funny because in the financial services space, I call myself a financial therapist a lot of times, because people don't understand that, like, our money and our money habits are tightly connected to our emotions and how we think. And so somebody comes to me like, oh, I need help getting out of debt or something. And we get down to the bottom of it. And really it's like some mental thing that their parents taught them that they don't understand is running and controlling their entire life. And so we have to untangle all these things. And especially when we get into relationships, or before we get into relationships, we have to untangle this. And that's really what therapy is. It's untangling this stuff.
I remember dating a guy who was not a fan of therapy. And he just was like, same kind of attitude, like, and I'm just like, he was big into name brand, and he would spend $500 on a pair of Giuseppe shoes. And I'm like, you know how many therapy sessions you could get with that? I think the second thing is, the type of therapy, right? So I think CBT is really good, because the goal of CBT is to change your thinking patterns.
What is that? And what is CBT?
Oh, cognitive behavioral therapy. Gotcha. So the goal of that is to change your thinking patterns. And I think that is a big deal. Like, the way we think matters. Some people have their thoughts based on their childhood. Some people have a lot of thoughts based on who they surround themselves with, right? So as someone who wants a healthy relationship, that means as an adult, Some people I can't, I could keep you right kind of here, but like I'm not calling you for, as much as, I hate to kind of admit somewhat, I went on like a Kevin Samuels binge after the last, we got together, and he said something that was kind of interesting. He was like, single friends keep friends single. And I was like, oh, let me just kind of consider that. I'm not saying he's right or wrong, but it is something to kind of consider, But anyway, and another thing we learned in school is this like strength-based perspective. So it's not just always focusing on, okay, the Black community, this, the negatives, right? Okay, because we have some strengths in the Black community, right? We have a lot of things that works for us. So use those strengths to make an impact. Like, don't always focus on the trauma, it's important. I'm not saying it's not important, but also find those strengths and use those to move forward as well.
I like it. I like that. That's a really good perspective, especially the you said it was cognitive therapy. What was that?
Cognitive behavioral therapy, yeah.
CBT, okay.
Because a lot of us, we have negative thought patterns. It's just, it's normal. We all do it. Even every one of us here. And finding out the root of it and then getting you to, so even when you're in the thought process, to tell yourself stop. And I'll be transparent, give an example. I remember dating someone, this was a few years ago, and I feel like I messed up. I feel like I lost someone really, really amazing. And in order to stop beating myself up for that, I'll tell myself, look, remember, you didn't have the tools then to have a healthy relationship that you do now. So it's just training your brain to think something different. Because me constantly beating myself up about messing up that relationship, who is that helping? Not me. Right. How do you move forward if you still blaming yourself for what you did wrong then?
Yeah.
So just reminding yourself, like, you didn't have the tools to be successful then, but you got them now. So now you're ready, you prepared,
That's really good. And I think when you said that, one of the biggest things that came to my mind first was fear, right? Like sometimes we're afraid of whatever, and that could be afraid of, I'm going to mess this up again. Or on the other side, where I had the trauma, being transparent, I said this before, is fear of is the other person going to be the last person, right? Or are they going to do something that triggers me, right? That little boy inside of me that hasn't figured life out yet, right? Are they going to break me on that side? And so it is important we change our thinking, because that negative thought pattern, we all have it about different things. It runs subconsciously, and it is a monster. Yes. It really is a monster. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Like, again, listeners, this is solution-based. We can stop it right now. And the ladies have dropped enough gems that we can cut this episode and cut it up, and then it'd be enough, right? But we still going. But I want to always take a moment to appreciate what was said, because this is a moment to stop. Sometimes you got to stop the podcast and think and realize what was just being said. So with that being said, let's go to one of the fellas, LD. Or Lawrence, as it's presented to the world, right? We call him LD. Chico, El Dorado. What's another nickname? I know we got a lot of them out of there. But what you got, man? What's a solution you would bring to the table?
Well, actually, just in listening to the ladies, it was, he actually kind of opened my own mind thinking right now, because a lot of what I've gone through in my life is based on fear. And so I think that is one thing, is, eliminating fear. And I think that branches off to a little bit what Adrissa was saying, having that thought process and really taking it down, is like, what is it that is, slowing you up from taking that step? And so, for instance, I'll give an example. For me, I had a lot of hard times in college, and I'm being transparent, asking for help, whether if it was, something I was going through, on the basketball court, or it was something in schools, like, hey, I need help, getting this assignment done, because I need to make it a pass and be able to go to play. And I think a lot of times in our community, we do not we don't ask for help. I don't think we know how. I don't think we even know how. I don't think in terms of mentorship, some of our even people we thought to be mentors even taught us to really teach us how to ask for help and such. But I think that's the solution is asking for help. Point blank.
No, I it's so funny, man. Like, we were very close in college, still now, right? Like, of course. And I remember like those times where it got to that point and one was like, "You good?" And you were like, "Yeah." I was like, and you were like, "I probably should have asked for help a long time ago," until we got to this last moment. But we've all been there, right? Like, I think about like, and everybody can probably relate to this to some degree or know someone. As a Black community, we took pride. Our parents took pride on getting us out the house at 18, right? Like, it was like, or at least you heard of it. Like, I know in my house, my daddy was like, I was out of the house at 17, right? Like, my dad was like, cool. I was like, I'm going to Miami. He was like, cool, here's your plane ticket, right? Now, he would have let me stay because my daddy loved me, right? But there's this thing about like, do we really know what's going on? Like, do our kids know to ask for help? Like, when they get out on their own and they don't ask for help, they were told, hey, once you graduate from high school, you're it. So if we don't learn how to ask for help by being a kid, and then we're like pushing our kids out right at 18 into the world without any support, it's kind of like, you got to figure this out. Like, that leads to problems. That led to a lot of bad decisions that I made, and I dragged Lawrence and Chris along with it, right? It led to a lot of that stuff. So we got to be willing to teach our kids and ourselves how to ask for help and not be ashamed. But that also goes to, somebody said earlier, having the right people around. Jessica, I think that was you, right? Like, having the right people around you so that you can feel comfortable asking for help, right? If you got people around you that are negative Nancy's, and they don't care to like figure through their traumas or anything else like that, like, that's not a safe spot to go ask for no help into. So it's also around the type of people that we put around us. So that's a really good point, LD, man. Like, I really appreciate you for saying that. Terrance, man, we appreciate you for being here as well. Go ahead, Jessica, you had something really quick. I'm sorry.
Jess, I think one of y'all had something.
Me and Jessica was like, but wait.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead, real quick. Then I'll jump into Terrance. My bad. I saw the hand come up at the end.
I can wait.
Go ahead. Jess.
Just to piggyback off of what Terrell said, I understand the point about with the children and growing up and feeling like, making kids feel like they're a burden on your life. And now you're 18, you're out of my hair for the rest of your life. And I really feel like that has a negative impact on kids. And also, like, if you didn't teach a kid to fish, how can you expect them to fish as an adult? So we're seeing a lot of like people weren't prepared for adulthood. And then now they're an adult, you're 18, you just got to figure it out. That's just, I feel like that's one of the problems as well, is like, prepare, as parents, we have the responsibility to prepare our children for being adults, not just saying you're an adult and now figure it out.
And this idea that 18 makes you an adult.
Exactly. It's not, it's teenagers.
I'm still not. I'm 36. I figured it out.
Somebody asked me why you don't have kids. Somebody asked me why you don't have kids. Yeah, I'm like, I'm still raising me. I'm still figuring this out, right? Again, transparency. I just moved out of my mom's house for the first time at 35. So I've always lived at home. So there's things that, I'm like, well, dang, nobody really taught me how to do this. And nobody, I know the basics, but, if I got to put, I don't even know if the air conditioner in the window right now, but yeah, I think this idea that asking for help, I don't know if it's necessarily your friends, but I think it's a collective thing within the community as well. Something like, you asking for help is just kind of like, looked down upon versus like, oh no, I got you, whatever. Even for a while I was judged for still living at home at the age I was. And it's just like, okay, y'all press for me to move out, find the apartment and pay the rent, or kind of like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Like, what am I rushing for? To live alone, to struggle, to and I told my niece, like, look, you stay home until you're married. This ain't what you want. This ain't what you want.
Adrissa, I'm glad you were so transparent because I live at home too with my family. I'm building a brand, and I feel like it's this stigma that, you're not an adult if you don't move out. But what impact are you making in life? What are you doing and how are you progressing in life?
Right.
And I feel like in
I'm
the
sorry.
Black community, they've tried to force us to be like, oh, you living at home, that's it. But how many people got bad credit, can't buy a house, don't have a business, don't have generational wealth? I mean, but they live on their own, and there's nothing wrong with it. But I feel like in other cultures, they really support more like build yourself up,
Yes.
go,
Absolutely.
instead of like, now it's time for you to go. And I don't have nothing against people who move out. It's an amazing thing. I know it's a sense of freedom, like no other, to do whatever you want whenever you want.
It's
Have
a little ghetto,
but
all the bills by yourself.
It's very interesting, this conversation on the heels of talking about Kevin Samuels, because this is possibly what he's talking about, where there's a huge difference between men and women on this side. Because as women, I understand it's absolutely.
Oh, we're gonna judge men though.
It's exactly.
If you live at home, we're gonna judge.
If you live at home and at 32 as a man, you are out of nobody, no respect, gone.
It's
done.
I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't say no
1,000%.
respect. I
But
wouldn't
you
say
gotta
no
explain
respect.
yourself.
So
I wouldn't say like.
so we
There's
stick on-
there's some guys that are like, like Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, who's another one, Steve Jobs. These are all men who are the most respected businessmen in the entire world, who build businesses out of their home, who stay with their family. And there are people in different cultures who still do have their family knit, because family works really hard together. So it's not like as big of a stigma. I really look at more of, what are you doing with your life? Like, are you not doing anything? Are you not progressing?
I just think that's
you have
part
no
of the male's
goals?
life, though. That's part of the male's life is go hunt, like go figure that out. Like that's like when we talk about on the other side of like women being okay a little bit, right? Like to be a little bit older and staying home. I'm thinking of back, 50, 60 years ago, when being 15, you were a man and you went to work, right? At 15, it was a younger age back then that was more acceptable. Like, I don't need the school. I'm going to go provide for my family because I'm 15 and I know how to go do it. And
because it was based on surviving and not thriving. And I feel like
a lot of our
now,
community is in that place a lot of times where like, that's why we have to go kick them out, like go, like, because you got to go survive to figure this thing out.
Do you think some people are lazy? Are you thinking some people are lazy just because they live at home?
A lot of times, yeah.
I guess it depends. I guess it depends on the person and one's perception of what you see around you, and the type of diversity you see.
Men, not for
men.
Yeah, for men. Like for women, again, I don't like Adrissa. I appreciate the honesty. Like I wouldn't have thought anything by you living at home. As when my mom grew up with my grandma. My mom's been living with my grandma for 60 years now, right? Like at the end of the day, none of that matters. But as a man, to be like, hey, I'm 22 and I'm just hanging out, like kind of trying to figure it out myself, but at this house, like, I think that's where it's one of those things like, all right, well, you should get out. Like you should go, you should figure things out. Because
society is tougher on
Terrance, I want to hear Terrance talk because he tried to jump in a couple times. What you got on
this?
Yeah,
my fault, Terrance.
No, y'all good. I came late, so I understand. So just listening to everybody, especially about the home aspect, and I get it. As men, we should, lead, but at the same time, you may have to help your mom out or your grandmother out too. So sometimes for a man, you can't just walk away from somebody when your parents may need help, so you got to help with the bills, before you can probably, circumstance living on your own. And another thing is about, we talked about asking for help. I think in the community that we live in, we always have high expectations for ourselves. Our parents have high expectations. It's like, okay, you better not come home lower than a C or a B. So now you're put into this trauma, whereas though you're in school, sometimes you can't function because you're thinking about failure. Then here comes the negativity because you thought about what your parents had said if you came home with the wrong grade. And it kind of sticks and it kind of flourishes in life. So now when you have a test or you have to do something, you thought about what your parents said, or you thought about what the teacher said. And me growing up, I remember I had got tested to see if I was slow. Literally, they tested me. And I remember being in that class, and the teacher was giving me all this tests, and she's like, Miss Williams, I just want to let you know that your grandson never took off his jacket. And then we found that a concern. So my grandma said, why you never took off your jacket? I said, I didn't even know I was there. I thought we was leaving. I didn't know what was the purpose of me being there. They never told me, are we going to evaluate you, anything like that, you know? So it was a judgmental thing too as well. And then it's kind of like you can't put judgmental things on your learning curve or how you learn or whatever, but we put it, okay, you read this, you study that, and you pass that. Everybody's learning curve is different. We can't put everybody in the same category as learning, because one thing you may be good at, another person may not be good at. You know, but we have these high expectations, whether it be your mentor, they tell you something, they expect you to get it. And you're like, wait a minute, I don't know what you're saying. Can I ask you again? And that's the problem that we have, because we think when they tell us something, we understand it when we don't. And when it's hard for sometimes to process things, you may have to explain it maybe 1 or 2, 3 or 4 times, because that person's actually trying to get and process what you're saying. So a lot of this makes sense at the same time, you know. So
I think you're hitting
and I wish that I didn't mean to cut you off, and I wish that we get into that as far as that thing with people actually learning how to learn, because a lot of people don't learn how to learn, how to make things stick, how to make things and retain information, you know, and that's a key thing, especially in our community.
It's huge.
You know, they say it's 4 levels of learning, right? Unconscious incompetence, like you don't know what you don't know, right? What is it? Conscious incompetence, meaning you know what you don't know, like you see it, you can't process. Then it's conscious competence, meaning you can do it when you focus on it. And then there's unconscious competence, which is like tying your shoe, driving home. You don't think about it, but you know how to do it. And I think sometimes, Terrance, to your point, man, so many people are unconsciously incompetent or consciously incompetent, but they don't know what bridge is there. And what it sounds like from a solution standpoint is we're trying to show each other and build off of each other's knowledge of how to build the bridge from unconsciously incompetent to at least consciously competent, and then we can move forward. But for whatever reason in our community, it's so hard like to get that bridge built.
I'm gonna come full circle, T.
Go ahead, Chris.
I'm gonna come full circle because it's what Jess said. It's therapy. What we just talked about was, and T, I'm gonna use Terrance. I'm gonna use you as an example, right? Like just how our parents programmed us with a negative, some form of like repetition, some form of like, hey, you don't learn right, or something's up, right?
Right.
Then all of a sudden, as you get older, those become the same thoughts that you start to have that move you into adulthood. And until we get back and we start unraveling where that came from, and then you start telling yourself and reprogramming that, no, I am a learner. No, I am, right? Because in other communities and other people, I'm thinking specifically, I just saw this of Simon Sinek. If you don't know who Simon Sinek is, he's like a leadership guy, talks a lot. He actually just put out a piece of content that says he loves being the idiot. So in a room, he talks about when he's sitting in a boardroom with a bunch of C-suite, smart, professional people, and somebody's giving a presentation and he doesn't know, he's the guy that says, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, if you could just break this down for me, because I'm an idiot, I don't really get this. And he's confident and comfortable just being able to say, listen, I don't get that. And then what he says happens is the other C-suite people start saying, yeah, actually, I don't get it either.
Exactly.
I actually don't understand
exactly.
that. Right?
And that's what it is. Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. But like, we have to be free enough. And that comes from insecurity because of how we were parented, because of how we heard, like, it's not okay to ask the dumb question. It's not okay to be looked at as dumb. That's trauma. Those are things that we have to unravel so we can sit in the room and be like, I don't understand. And be perfectly confident saying, I don't understand.
And what makes you dumb? Why does it make you dumb? Because you don't know. So even taking some of these negative words off the table, I wouldn't call myself an idiot. I'm not calling myself an idiot.
That was
never.
Clickbait. It was clickbait. Right?
But I'm just saying, like,
let's put it in context.
Exactly.
But no, I'm just saying, some people will say negative words. I've seen people do it before. They will say, I'm stupid. Oh, this. I'm not saying these words to myself, because words mean have power. Words have power. So even like, you're not dumb because you don't know something. You just don't know.
You don't know it, especially if it's new to you too, how you can't learn? It's new.
You got to be a learner before you can be a leader. You have to be able to learn. How can you lead and you can't learn?
And I want to piggyback on what Terrance said about the grade situation, because that was my whole upbringing. You know, I was the super smart student, like I'm the one who got the master's in the film, yada, yada. But no one ever said, go to school to learn. It was the grade expectation. Because you get an A, that means you know, when the reality of it is, it does not. That means that maybe you're just, you know, for example, math, you know, it's about repetition. I didn't learn that until I was older. So math was never my strong suit, you know, but the idea that, you know, the grade means like, oh, my baby's smart, but it's like, you know, and what does smart really mean, you know, or words like good or whatever. But yeah, I feel like, you know, my niece now, she would get like in trouble for getting a C. And I'm just like, well, hold on, sis, because if we pull out your report card from 1970, whatever, you wasn't doing the do either. So why is the expectation is that I got to be better than you, which means I got to soar, which is exhausting, by the way.
It is.
It's
the trauma. It's
I got to do everything you couldn't do and beyond.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Yeah, that is so real. That is so real.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like there's a fine line, I feel like, between pushing your kid, like, because you should have expectations of your kid to be great. But still also allowing them. So I feel like
expectation.
I feel like some people don't know where that boundary is, and the fear of their kid not getting ahead in life, you know, drives that. But it's also like, at what point are you not that parent? You know, some kids need a lot more motivation, a lot more. And I feel like every kid is different in how, you know, what they need. But some kids need, like, no, we don't accept this. Like, I feel like it's just confusing in regards to like what is, like, you set expectations you have for your kid without you being like that stage parent who is too negative on your kid. But like, you need to have this I feel like, you know,
parenting is tough.
Kids, you know,
I think the expectation has
it's a tricky one
to be realistic, though, right? I think we really, and you know, take this how you want to, people, but I think we really kind of ingrain in our children that, you know, they can be whatever they want, right? And I'm not saying it's wrong, but I do think it puts this unrealistic expectation. There are limitations.
No,
but I don't believe that. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to disagree.
She said a hot take. She started off with this is her truth now. Y'all give her truth. Y'all gotta give it to her.
We're just giving perspective.
I'm going to give an example.
Okay.
So this is why I have shifted my perspective on Kevin Samuels. So I really, at one point, I don't know about right now, I really, really wanted kids, right? Kids was like a big deal to me. I wouldn't even date someone if they didn't want kids. It was like an issue where I would cry about it because there was going to be some complications because I'm a transplant recipient. I had a kidney transplant. So there would be complications, right? And when I come to my friends, they're like, you know, no, but my friend, you know, she, and you know, 35 is that geriatric age, right? So it sounds so attractive, geriatric age. So my friend would be like, you know, nah, cause my friend had a child at 40. Yeah, my other friend got pregnant at 42. They never had a kidney transplant though. So you got to put these realistic expectations. That's what I mean. So there are limitations too. So I feel like that's what he's saying. Like, you know, to some extent, there are going to be some limitations. So you trying to I get it, you trying to encourage me. You want me to be hopeful. You want me to be, but there's a part of me that has to be realistic, right? So the idea that, you know, the reality is what it is. Faith, however, is that the reality will change, but it is what it is. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying, and I really, you know, I really sympathize with you. I have a friend who wants to have babies, and it's going to be complicated for her. And I really sympathize with any woman who, you know, is going through that situation. But in regards to the children, my mindset is a little bit different. I really feel like they need to believe they can do whatever they want to do, especially in the Black community, because there's people who could be rocket scientists, you know, anything they want to do. This is just what I believe personally. If you work hard, you master something, you can be great and you can do what it is you want to do. They have to have that insane faith level to accomplish what they want to go, especially with everything that they are going up against. I believe that people can be whoever they want to be. Maybe the pathway to getting there isn't like a set cookie cutter pathway to get there, but I feel like everyone can be what it is that they want to be if they work hard enough and if they believe it. And I really when it comes to the children, that's a really important, but I believe it's realistic if you believe it's realistic. But I don't think like that. I believe that it's realistic if you believe it's realistic. And I'm not talking about your specific situation, just to be clear. I'm not talking about your specific situation. I'm talking about the children and their aspirations and their goals. And I feel like they should be promoted to think big and dream big and be supported while doing so.
I'm not saying they shouldn't, but I think there has to be some reality to it.
But what is reality? Reality is in the eye of the beholder.
Well, I think also I want to cut in really quick. I hear two different conversations happening, right? Like just like I hear like physical limitations, potential physical limitations. Like I want to be 7 feet tall. My body ain't growing 7 feet tall. Now I might go be able to get some leg extensions and stuff, right? I can think outside the box, but they're out there. I heard some short dudes got some leg extensions out there. Like, no, I mean, I think I said my second offensive thing today, right? One on camera and off camera. So people that are shorter than average, right? Like so, right? But I think we're talking about physical limitations, right? Like some women can't have children. Like they can't, right? Like no matter how much they dream about it, like they can't or have faith on it. Now we know that there's a miracle working God, etc. If you believe in that, that's a different conversation. But what it sounds like, Jessica, what you're talking about is like the ability to be who I need to be, regardless of physical, limitations that don't have these constraints, if you will, right? And so I just want to put that out there from an outside perspective, listening to two women talk about children and stuff, which I can't have that conversation, right? It just sounds like two different conversations happening. I want to make sure I put it in perspective.
Thank you.
So let me say this. I want to clarify because I don't want y'all to think I'm out here telling the kids like you a big dummy. No. I'm thinking like so. For example, both my nieces, they have really really great qualities, right? And I'm going to push their passions and their strengths versus. So my oldest niece is in college to be a physical assistant or whatever. I don't think she's really passionate about that. I'm a supporter, but there's something else that I see in her and that she underlining is there, but because, the family is like, oh yeah, that's going to make a lot of money and that's going this, the idea that there. So I guess maybe I should rephrase it that I'm more so like, I'm going to support the passion or the, what you're good at or what you're well in. Does that
no,
clarify?
that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
That makes perfect sense. And also that's the best thing.
I was trying to think I was out here like, no,
good recovery. But that's the best thing. Like I if we're gonna touch on this like kids and school topic, right? Like I always steer kids away from if that's not your passion. Like the reason kids aren't motivated is just because we haven't found something for them to be motivated for, right? Like right? We've talked about this, right? Just with esports, right? Just like, I get it before, playing video games was nothing. But now, if that's really where your 13-year-old's brain is and they enjoy it and they love it, then treat it like a sport and let them go that direction. Right.
Yeah, we're gonna snip that and give it to Ebony.
Yeah, we will. Like I got a close business partner and friend of mine. She's got 2 young ones. Her son, we cannot get him to focus on school, but he loves to focus on money and entrepreneurship. I'm like, he's bored at school, but he likes this. So give him more of that and he will become successful. He does not need an A in every class just because that's what society tells us. And it's very much so, just so what you're saying, like, I always think you don't have to have a child. Every woman is not here just to be a mother, right? Like there are other things, but like you have to mold a child to let them know that you don't have to stick to society standards. You can have whatever you want, be whoever you want, but go that path and be okay to go that path. That's the message we have to start empowering these children with. And if school's not the thing, school's not the thing. You can go do that thing and be great at that.
I don't think college is for everybody.
I absolutely don't either. And like I said, back to, Google has these programs kids can get in at 16 years old. So I think we're going to start seeing kids drop out at 15 because they have the ability to make more money than their parents, because they're 15-year-olds making 100.
You talking about dropping out, not getting a bare minimum high school diploma?
Absolutely.
I don't agree with that. I don't know about that part.
I'm telling you, because this is what's going to happen, because the internet.
It's happening now.
Well, why rush into adulthood?
Because they can. Because like 50 years ago, they were 15 making money and doing things. Like we're way past this point. They're kids.
But why? But there's other things. There's social parts of school. There's proms, there's all these types of things with school. Like life is not just work, it's about having balance with social life too.
Real quick, understand, they could also take a trip to France at 18 and live a completely different life than somebody that goes to a prom. Right? What we limit, even
it's
us,
not a limitation, but a kid not finishing you have literally 2 years left of high school, and you're going to be a full-blown adult to do whatever it is you want to do.
And if you're passionate,
why would you not get the bare minimum high school diploma?
Because you're passionate.
You can always go back too.
I will answer that question.
Why? But why when you're right there?
Just listen, because
I can understand college.
Your path may be different,
your passion is different.
I don't know about I don't
into the right direction.
Well, maybe you can do online school or something, but
you're held on to, right? Like this is opening our mind. This is opening our mind.
My mind is open, but not open to a kid not getting a bare minimum high school diploma.
But that's your expectation.
But there are people who are successful without it.
Without it, but they don't have to be.
I'm not saying you need it. Like Floyd Mayweather doesn't know how to allegedly read, but he's rich. But that doesn't mean that I agree with that.
But I'm just saying you have to be open to understanding
that's a little different.
A child
heard about that. I don't know if that part's true.
I mean, he followed his passion, but again, he's successful.
All right.
Really quick. One thing I just want you to understand in this context is that a child's path is different. If that's what we're going to talk about in allowing a child to be anything they want to be, then if they are equipped at 14, at 15, at 21, it doesn't matter when they become equipped. If they are equipped, then the traditional way that we think about it may not be for them. I'm not saying it's for the broad audience, but I'm just saying in general, right now, there are children that are under the age of 18 that are more equipped than a 35-year-old to go support themselves. And
okay, but that's not, I'm not limiting them.
Jessica, I'm gonna let you get the last one. Go ahead, and then we'll wrap it up, but go ahead, Jessica, last point.
Okay, well, time is something that, they have. I mean, nobody's time is guaranteed, but for the average person, time, they have time to do that. I don't see the purpose of rushing into adulthood when you're a teenager at 15 years old. I don't see the purpose of rushing. I feel like if you have other passions, like there's kids in entertainment who don't go to traditional school, but they're still learning. They still have a teacher, they still have a tutor.
But they
and
they don't view it as rushing. They view it as they're ready.
No, but they're still getting their education while they're doing that, and then they get their high school diploma, and then it's on selling from there. I don't agree with saying like, okay, you want to drop out of high school.
I would drop out of high school. Drop out of high school. I'm just telling you, I would let her drop out
and travel to France and learn another.
You can still travel to France. Why can't you can still travel to France?
We're just talking about again.
All right. All right. Here we go. All right, that'll be all right. I'm gonna be judge here. Ding ding ding. Right. All right. So what do we learn? Right.
A lot.
We learned a lot.
And then we might need a part 3.
We didn't get through the other two questions.
We got other questions.
Oh, wow. I forgot about
that. I knew this was going to happen. That's good. But maybe we got to come back for round 3. Like, we'll work on that. But I want to crystallize something here because we want to respect time as we always do. Think about this. Jessica, it's her standard. She's very clear about her standard and expectations and reasons why. Chris has a standard, right? Very clear about his expectations. What's right or wrong? We can take those words off the table. That's your standard, right? That's your standard. That's your walk of life. That's how you're parenting. That's how you're moving forward. And I want to bring something up. I just sat back and it was so beautiful watching, listen to all these people and perspectives. And guess what I heard? We had a conversation last week about Kevin Samuels and these topics. We all realized it was a problem in the Black community, building families, etc. Everybody was tasked with bringing at least one solution to the table. Do you not know no one spoke about the other person? Everybody pointed the finger right at themselves and how they can get better, how they can continue to grow, how they can improve, and how they needed to position themselves for the next person. No one up here said, well, if women did this, if men did this, or anything of that nature. It was about ourselves, right? It's about ourselves. If we want something to change in this world, I'm a big believer in Chris. We always say this on the podcast. You must change. I'm a big believer also that I don't believe in, my better half. People be like, oh, my better half wife or my better half husband. No, I'm not a half. Because that means I was incomplete coming into the situation. That's the problem. That's why most people get divorced and break up, is because they're incomplete going into it. No, I am a whole individual when I get married. That's how I should have been. I wasn't. I can be honest about that, right? And then my wife should be a whole individual, and we come together and make a super individual. Right,
hey,
that's good. That's a good one.
That's how we should come together. That's
yes.
a quote. Oh yeah, sprinkle on there.
Write that down.
Right, like
you better write it down before I steal it.
You can't be put that on your podcast. It came here first. Just give recognition. Right? But no, for real though, that's how it should be. Two whole individuals, and that's what we were talking about today. Being completely whole individuals coming together and creating something more beautiful and more special. And if we decide to have other little babies that look like us and think like us and everything else, then we can do it. But it'll be a lot easier, and we can have a lot of these other problems solved if we do that from the start. So I want to appreciate y'all for doing exactly what I thought was going to happen. Talk about yourself, right? Not about other people. So with that being said, if we can talk it offline. I want to put anybody on the spot, but if you want to come back for part 3, we did have other questions. Everybody was ready and amped up to give. We'll come back to it, but I think this is a good stopping point right here. Chris, what you got to say on this one to wrap it up.
Again, I appreciate you all jumping on, giving your perspective. This is what we're here to do for everybody listening. Again, this is the purpose of it. It's not right or wrong. It's just someone's perspective. If you can learn to understand somebody else's perspective, trust me, your life is going to get so much better. You're going to be able to find the relationships. All those things are going to happen if you can just understand perspective. So I appreciate all of you jumping on. And again, listeners, hey, hit up me and T. Let us know what your thoughts are, what your perspective is. We always want to hear from you. And I really do think we need a part 3. Like, if you guys are up for it, I'm down. You guys good?
I'm up for it.
Part 3 and possibly a part 4 if it goes the way today
It's
went.
like this needs to just be the perspective. Like this just needs to be the whole, all 6 of us. This just needs to be the forum.
We might have to figure this out and turn this into something different. So I appreciate that, Adrissa. I'm gonna let that marinate. We're gonna figure it out. But
Chris is gonna go all off the wall. He's gonna call me, text me with 100 ideas. Thank you, Adrissa. I appreciate you.
Hey, the mind of the entrepreneur, man. We're always thinking. We're always thinking and moving. So I
think we could have some really interesting conversations with us being single, you guys being married, and I think it could just, dating and what that looks like. I think we could have some really great conversations.
Some real juicy topics too. Yeah, we didn't get down to the juicy stuff.
No, we didn't. No, we didn't get personal yet.
There's a lot of juicy. Yeah, because there's some questions that need to be answered. Right?
Yes, especially it's for Black men here. I would love to pick y'all brain about so many different things, right, Jessica?
Yeah, I said the time is now. Yeah. We haven't, and if you know about a woman, we are very detail oriented. So we gonna be ready. So make sure y'all ready.
Listen,
make sure y'all ready to answer questions.
Listen, the spinoff is coming. The relationship perspective is coming soon. We're gonna make this thing happen. We appreciate all you guys, and we're signing off this week.
Where can we find everybody? We got to get it.
We already did that last week. It's the same.
They need it again.
You should do it every time. For new people.
For new people that are listening.
Exactly.
Jess, go ahead. Where can they find you, Jess?
You can find me at the Tech Barbie. It's right there. My name is right there on the screen. Instagram.
IG. Terrance, where can they find you?
You can find me on my Instagram, which is Terrance29, and also my podcast, which is the Terrance and Adrissa Experience.
Adrissa, do you want them to just find
you
you
can
here?
find me on the relationship
There we go.
perspective that we're going to create together. Okay, you can find me right there.
There we go. And Lawrence.
I'll be the same thing. You can find
Oh,
Lawrence, you told him last week. That's fine.
Dundada 33 on Instagram.
It's the same one from MySpace, y'all, back in the day. Black Planet. It's the
his
same thing.
MySpace handle. He hasn't changed it.
Really?
You can find him.
Wow.
Either way. Guys, we're signing off for another week of the Perspective Podcast. Until next week, stay blessed. You guys enjoy your week.
Bang, bang.
All right, peace.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Perspective Podcast. We hope this conversation made you think a bit deeper, gain some insight, or even possibly even gain a brand new perspective. If you did enjoy it, do us a favor, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, Anchor, or anywhere else you stream. Leave a review to help more people experience these conversations and potentially change their perspective as well. And lastly, as always, T and I want you to connect with us. So follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. You can find us just by using our names. And there we get a chance to hear your perspective. Until next time, God bless.